Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Decode podcast. Today's guest is Lianne Potter, Head of SecOps for a major retailer. And welcome Lianne, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very excited. Tomorrow's B-Sides Leads, a little plug there for it.
Nice.
It comes around this time every year. It's a bit like Christmas, but maybe a bit more fun. Really great vibe to it. So if you've not been to B-Sides Leads yet, highly, highly recommend it. So I'm very excited.
We will plug it in this. We'll put links and B-Sides is quite a common occurrence across, I believe, multiple locations around the world now. Mm-hmm. So I think it started originally, was it the UK? And then it's been adopted wider. So excellent. And we'll probably kick off then, Lianne, to discuss a bit about you. If you can give me a brief overview of who you are, your career, and also the cyber anthropology, because this is a topic I have always wanted to talk to you about. And I'm so glad that we reconnected. We've been speaking. And just as an FYI for everyone, I actually think I tried to approach Lianne many, many years ago for a job, and I don't know what happened. So now we've kind of circled back. So please, Lianne, yes, please introduce yourself and tell me all the wonderful things that you're doing.
So I'm currently head of security operations for a major retailer. Been there 2 years now. I'm basically building a security function from scratch. So that's the SOC, incident response, but network security, cloud security, DevSecOps, which is pertinent because I used to be a developer myself. I also have security awareness under that, security engineering, as well as I have what I call my little stable of security consultants that are all sort of technical, and they go in and advise on projects within the business from a technical cybersecurity standpoint. So that's my remit. When I started 2 years ago, there was 2 people on the team, and now we're a huge team of 20 with 50 other contractors as well. So it's grown quite a lot in the last few years. So it's very, very busy work. Outside of work, I have my own podcast called Compromising Positions. If you do Google it, I would really recommend your listeners Google Compromising Positions Cybersecurity Podcast. I cannot be held responsible if you start Googling Compromising Positions on your work machine. But our shtick is that we interview only non-cybersecurity people about cybersecurity.
So nice.
So other developers, people working in data science, people working in UX, or other areas of the sort of tech field, or sometimes we get in behavioral scientists in, psychologists and other anthropologists in. So it's really kind of different spin on it. It's part therapy, part learning about how to innovate, learning actually what the people we're serving actually really think about cybersecurity and what they want from us. And so the goal is to really kind of get us outside our own bubble and start thinking about how can we approach cybersecurity in a way that people actually start doing what they want, what we want them to do, which is obviously one of the bigger challenges there. And so, and that's me. And in September, I'm doing a master's in AI and data science. We're hopefully applying that to cybersecurity. There is no cybersecurity modules in the university course that I'm going to, which I will point that out when I'm there.
It's quite surprising, yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff on ethics, which is great, don't get me wrong. But there isn't a cybersecurity module on there. So it's only a relatively new course. So I'm going to
shocked,
just kind of... Yeah. Well, think about it. We're training all these people in AI and data science, and there is no cybersecurity module on there. What will that do for the future?
Oh, God, that'll create another issue like we unfortunately blame developers for when it comes to obviously insecure code. But, I think modestly you've avoided the fact that your podcast has recently won an award. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Was it?
So award-winning cybersecurity podcast.
And also an award-winning cybersecurity professional. So it's
I am, yeah.
Listen, we're all about winners in this channel.
I've got a shelf somewhere, and it's starting to creak, I would say. Not to be too kind of immodest, but last week we won best newcomer. So we've only been going for less than 12 months now. So nice. the podcast, so that was the European Cybersecurity Blogger Awards, and Graham Cluley from Smashing Security accepted the award on our behalf, which is very, very cool.
Amazing, iconic and legendary.
I'm a big fan of his show. He was one of the first podcasts I started listening to when I transitioned into cyber.
And it's interesting, you obviously mentioned you're building SecOps capability for your company from scratch, and Is there any kind of advice you would give people that are coming in? So you mentioned SOC, incident response. Talk me through, like, obviously you're a hiring manager, so kind of maybe run through the sort of things you're looking for. Not everyone obviously has these skills. Is there anything transferable?
Yeah.
Is there anything? I'm interested to hear your approach. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think the success of being able to establish all this at speed has been due to the fact of I've been very hands-on as a hiring manager. My team feels very handpicked. I'm looking for people who are definitely smarter than me, definitely have more expertise than me. I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I get the best out of people.
Yeah.
So when I'm out there recruiting, I'm looking for passion. I'm looking for someone who is okay with the fact that, things change. I think that's the biggest thing, particularly if you're building something from scratch. We're using new tools, we're using new technology. A lot of us, when we're coming through the sort of cybersecurity progression, we're kind of used to going, oh, there's loads of legacy here, we have to deal with that. In this environment, it's the opposite. And actually, that does require a different mindset change. We all talk about how much we love shiny new tools, but actually being faced with the fact that you've got shiny new tools that you have to configure. You have to work out what works, what doesn't work, what's playing nice with other things in a different way that legacy does. That's a very interesting challenge. And it's about having that kind of flexible mindset to say, maybe there isn't documentation written on how this is done. Maybe we have to kind of feel around for ourselves and work out how this is going to happen. And so I need people who will, yes, draw upon their own experiences, but will also go and think, how can I do this differently? And maybe more intuitively, maybe more securely than you would have got an option with a legacy estate.
I love that, because you almost need to go on that self-discovery of understanding the mechanics of something. Probably you need to sink or swim, right? So you're obviously going to learn quicker as well, because obviously you're aware that maybe you have a knowledge gap or skill gap, and then you're effectively allowed to experiment. And I don't think, Leanne, that there's many people, cyber leader, that allows folk to just go in a role and just take their time with it.
Yeah.
And I think quite often with hiring, people are just like, we need someone with 20 years experience, and it's just like, it doesn't always work. My apologies, please.
I was just going to say, so one of the kind of selling points, when I say I'm very hands-on with the recruitment, I do lots of silly videos and memes and things like that to try and get people in, to kind of sort of create a sense of like, this is fun what we're doing as well.
Yeah.
Everyone in my team on their CV will be able to say, I established X. And I think that's an amazing selling point for people. That's an amazing growth opportunity for people to come in and do. But you've got to be mindful that comes with a lot of work. Yeah. And so it can be very daunting for people, to sort of say, hey, we're all working on this, for the first time in some cases on some elements of it. We're all going to work together and try and problem solve together. And so everyone in my team, not only are they great as individuals, but I made sure I hired people that would definitely seek collaboration. And there's no one on my team that wouldn't be able to tap anyone else on the shoulder, regardless of what capability they're in. If they're in DevSecOps, or if they're in security engineering or network security, tap one on the shoulder and say, help me out, fix this problem. And so we all looking together, and it's great.
Yeah, everyone wants to work in that environment. And I think, maybe some aspects of the episode today, we'll talk about those kind of ups and downs, within our teams that we create, or within the companies that we work in. And, that is, I think, really important for people when they're maybe taking a step into something new, or they're crossing over into something, and having that sense of community is good. Because I love your content that you post on LinkedIn, and anyone watching this, at the end, you're going to learn something. You're going to learn that security isn't always about the doom and gloom. We need more positivity. Ironically, I was recording an episode recently, and it seemed like we were just like absolutely obliterating cyber. And it's just like, when you come away, you're like, oh my God, I need a holiday after that.
Oh no, I say to people I have silliness Tourette's. I think it's because outside of work, I'm part of an improv troupe. So I perform.
Wow.
Yeah. So I perform once a week. And improv's such a great skill to have. And I would really recommend people kind of consider going out there. You don't have to go and perform on stages, but go see if locally you've got a improv course. Because what improv teaches you It teaches you a couple of things. One of the main principles of improv is something called yes and. Now, you have to come into a scene with a yes and mindset. And what that basically means is that your job is to make the other person look good, right? So when you come into a scene and you've got a scene with another person, your job is to make that other person look good. Your job is not to be so funny that everyone goes and looks at you. Your job is to help that person. So when someone gives you a suggestion, like you start a scene and you go, oh, the cake is burnt. You don't come in and go, no, it's not.
Yeah.
That kills the scene dead.
Yeah.
You come in with a yes and mindset and say, yes, and I can't believe they did that and that and that. And the scene builds and builds and builds. Apply that principle, the yes and, to your work. Coming with the mindset, instead of just, especially in security, with just like, no, I'm going to cut this dead. Whatever they say, I'm going to just be resistant against it. But coming with a yes and mindset, for example, of, I've got this security problem. I would like to open up this port that I know you're not going to be happy at. But instead of going, yes and, but instead of saying no, just go, yes and this is how we can actually put some guardrails around it.
Yeah.
And start building those relationships. And that's sort of one of the main principles. So one of the main principles, yes and, but also make the other person look good. And I feel like in cybersecurity, we forget that we're actually, one of our jobs is to make other people look good. It's to make our organization look good so that they don't come, part of a breach or a hack and have reputational damage or, even financial damage. But it's also to make your developers look good. Wouldn't it be great to think about, how do I make other teams look good? How do I make the development team have less critical and high vulnerabilities when we do a pen test scan, right?
I absolutely love this.
How do we make them shine? Because if they're shining, they feel good about what we do. They want to work with us because we make them look good, right? And then there's going to be less resistance. If you come in and you pull out that pen test report and you go, guys, yeah, big trouble here, big trouble. And I'm going to take it to the CISO, and the CISO is going to take it to the exec, and the exec's going to jump up and down. Yes, it doesn't work. So I think we need to get out the mindset that we're not operating in an organization of, heroes and villains, and we're not the heroes of these stories, right? We're there to enable the business and enable the business to take risk. Again, we think in cybersecurity that risk is a dirty word. It's not a dirty word. The greatest innovators in this world are risk takers, and risk brings innovation. You can only engage in risky behavior to allow innovation to happen. Now, that's not to say that we all go making stupid mistakes when it comes to our security, but we need to be business enablers for risk so they can innovate. Because at the end of the day, if the company does well, I get paid. If the company doesn't do well, layoffs happen, right? So it's my job to ensure that the business innovates so they can keep being profitable. But we don't think of it like that. We just think, oh, we're here to stop, we're here to block, we're here to prevent.
I think that the paradigm is probably shifting, and I like that philosophy. And I'm telling you, someone's going to write a book on this, and I think it should be you. Is the yes and philosophy. That is an amazing approach to it, because it allows to take that risk, and it allows to obviously mitigate the risk as possible, as much as you possibly can, because a company can't grow unless it takes risk, and also innovation can't happen. But I love that. So in terms of like the challenges you've faced within your career, or in general, that can be professional, that can be personal, entirely up to you. Run me through some of these challenges and how you overcame them.
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, I'm a career retrainer. So I was actually a wedding photographer for 10 years. And then,
wow.
And then I became an anthropologist, like a paid anthropologist. And it wasn't just a researcher. I actually worked in an organization as an anthropologist, specializing in digital anthropology. So the study of how digital cultures are formed, how we engage with the world online. And I thought to myself, right, I want to, instead of just kind of talking the talk, I want to actually have impact using anthropology in technology, because I could see technology was moving so fast away from just being about the tools rather than the cultural ramifications of what we were building. Now I was actually seeing so many people being completely disadvantaged by the technology we were building.
Yeah, of course.
And there's something called the digital divide, which suggests that if you don't have access to online services, so things like the benefit system, which all got moved online, to things like housing, you have to apply for a housing benefit, housing online and things like
Even banking.
Banking, gas and electric prices, people forget about that. Like being able to actually have ownership to be able to say, find the cheapest price when you're on a very low income makes a massive difference. So the digital divide posits that if you don't have access to it, you are socially disadvantaged in some way. And it just kind of got me worried about where we were going with all this, because I was actually seeing this in my digital anthropology role. It was really having an impact. And so I decided to teach myself how to code. Now, that was the first stumbling point. Like I was not very technical. Like I was the person who fixed the computer in the living room back in the 90s, the family computer. But I wasn't the overly technical one by any stretch. So I used free online resources to train myself up how to code. And I did treat it like a full-time job. So I did spend like every kind of waking hour teaching myself using free online resources and going to tech meetups and things like that to really kind of do a big, like almost like my own personal boot camp crash course into being a software developer. It was really tough because, like anything, when you're learning things, it's really exciting, and you think, oh, I can really do this, and then all of a sudden you'll hit like a complexity curve, and then you'll just your confidence just drops straight down. And especially doing it on your own, and you've got kind of no one to really bounce ideas off of, or even just show you how to do something. There were points where I'd literally just be sat there just going, why isn't this code compiling? I can't work out why this isn't working. But I got over it, and then it was literally within 5 months I applied for the NHS's software development graduate scheme. I was the oldest graduate there because the NHS had like a clause where you could be a graduate at any point. Like I finished university decades ago. So I was like classed as a kind of graduate. And I was accepted, and I was accepted because of the anthropology side, I think, as well as the technical. I did technical tests and all that a lot, but I think what I went in and I said, look, the NHS is there for everyone. It's got to serve everyone, and that is a lot of culture. So I think if you want someone to start building these tech tools, you're going to have to consider someone who has actually been a researcher in culture, so an anthropologist, and come in and see what this person can do to kind of influence your choices you're making about the tech you're building. And so they did, so they accepted me on. So I was a software developer there, working on the website and things like that. And then I became fascinated by a team which operated completely different to the engineering team. Now, the engineering team were really fun, cool, hip. There were bean bags around. This is before lockdown, stuff like that. And it really kind of sociable. But every time we'd come to an end of a sprint or a project, obviously we had to have a pen test report, and engaging with a specific team who literally were walled off in another part of the building that you had to have key cards to get into. I found that from an anthropological sense very, very interesting that there was 2 different cultures working on this organization, but they had a shared goal. And so I spent a year, literally a year, one, upskilling myself, again, using free online resources, but also bugging the CISO of NHS Digital, like, can I come and join you? Now, at the time, they didn't have a graduate scheme, so it was really, really difficult. But after a year, literally, of every single working day, bugging this poor CISO, I wore him down, and I finally got to come in as a SOC analyst. And that was very, very interesting. It wasn't the greatest experience to start with. One of the things is, being the only woman in the team was interesting. But it was a little bit cold, and I found it, as someone who's quite personable, very kind of jarring. And it took pretty much by the time I left before it kind of thawed a little bit. But I think the biggest kind of challenges I've faced is more of my own internal challenges. It's that kind of imposter syndrome, which I'm sure probably comes up tons on this show, which is every day going, I haven't got the kind of, the traditional background. Where does that place me in the kind of scheme of things? Am I less of a cybersecurity professional because I have that? This is my own internal monologue. It's not true. I know it's not true. But am I less than, someone who's, done the MSc and gone on and done all this and things like that, or, that kind of feeling that you're going to kind of get found out one day that, oh, she hasn't got decades of cybersecurity experience, and how can we entrust her to run these large projects and things like that. So that kind of always persists. Still get asked if I'm the sales girl or the marketing girl when I go to cybersecurity conferences, which is their loss, because I am the budget holder for my department, and anyone that calls me that all of a sudden doesn't get any of my money.
They just go on the blacklist. Yeah,
absolutely. So that was kind of like one of the things that still annoys me, is that.
And do you think we probably know the answer, right? Because it is male dominated, it's full of idiots, and people just don't think because they only see a mirror image of themselves or whatever it may be, because it is very, I think at times, very egocentric. Through your anthropology mindset and everything else, why do you think it's still a problem of that, these misconceptions or these stupid mindsets that people have towards females within the industry and make those assumptions? I'm really interested to get that point of view.
Yeah. So from an anthropological perspective, our civilization has relied on us surrounding ourselves with people like ourselves, right? It's a shorthand. We're able, once we build a community of like-minded people, we're all aiming for a similar goal. Now, that causes a couple of issues. It causes great bonuses, because, together you're stronger. And if you're all working towards the same goal, regardless if you all, act and sound alike or come from the same background and things like that, it does help to a point. But then when you start wanting to go from surviving to thriving, that's when it becomes a problem. Because outsiders, in any sense, not just female, but anyone that's a little bit different to your status quo, challenges your belief and understanding of the world. And as humans, we find that very difficult to kind of get our heads around. And you can see that with the increase in the rhetoric, around fake news and things like that. You hear people, flat earthers, why is that even a thing, in this day and age? And it's because people, when they surround themselves by a certain narrative that appeals to them, it's very hard to break out of that. And that narrative could be right or wrong, as in truthful, or not truthful, factual, infactual. And it's really hard to break out of. And it's habit forming. And as anyone that's ever had a habit or addiction, whether it be smoking, chocolate, anything, harder stuff, drugs, alcohol, habits are really, really hard to break. And, what do they say about smoking? It takes like 3 or 4 attempts before you have a success. Think about a traditional, and I'm saying traditional, cybersecurity team. I know it's getting better. My team, for example, has a 50-50 gender split. So,
nice.
So it is getting better, but think about a traditional cybersecurity team. If you only get maybe one, let's use the example of one female every 1 year, building up building up your team, you don't have time to break that habit. And if you don't break it any sooner enough anyways, that female will likely leave anyways. If it's a shit environment, they will likely leave. And so then you're back to square one. And so you can't kind of build up on that kind of habit breaking activity if that never happens. And so that's kind of the reason why it kind of proliferates. And that's so it's a good thing. We do kind of, relate to people who are like us. It's, as I say, but that's surviving. When you get to thriving, you need to break out that mindset.
Absolutely. I think in the past, as someone who's been looking at hiring, I've identified profiles through like LinkedIn searches and been like, this person looks astute. I've never kind of really thought about it in terms of, if I'm hiring an engineer, I don't care if they're 7 foot tall. I was going to go full Braveheart William Wallace there, but I better not. I don't want to confuse the audience. But, I've never really looked at that. And then obviously as you get older, there are more and more, you see it and you're like, you speak to recruitment or whatever, and you're like, why is there no why isn't there X applying for this role? Like, what can we do to promote it? What can we do? And I remember one night I was like, right, I'm just going to hit some people up on LinkedIn, and I got 0 responses. And I was like, wow, right, that's clearly a bigger problem than obviously what I'm seeing and what I'm exposed to.
Yeah, I remember one role I was struggling to recruit for. And it was the first time in my sort of tenure there that I actually went out to recruiters. And I turned around to them when I got all these CVs. I was like, any women apply. You have any women on your roster? And they told me no woman works in that field. I was like, I've already got 2 women already doing that job. I don't understand. That's what I was told. I was told no women do this job.
Wow.
And then I said, try harder. So I sent them off on their way. And then they submitted CVs to me that were women, totally irrelevant to the job, as if I only cared about them being women. No, what I cared about was actually having a good candidate pool, a diverse candidate pool.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, we didn't hire a woman, but that's not the point. The point was I wanted to see that from the recruiters, and I was shocked by the answer. I was shocked by the answer.
I've been there before, and absolutely when it comes to the pool, right, you want as many good candidates as possible, and you want it to be broad spectrum. And worked with a recruitment team, and they were sending me stuff for like when we say security, they thought it was like physical security, like security guards, security people, and I'm like getting CVs from like people that work on building sites or a supermarket, and I'm like, what is going on here? Then you obviously need to say this is exactly what I'm looking for, and then you kind of break that down. But it's I don't know. I think there needs to be a massive conscious effort within organisations to really look at it. I worked at an organisation last year, and I think 55% of the entire company was female. And then the diversity pool, I think, was polling, don't quote me this, I think it was a 10 or 15% on other diverse items, and that includes neurodiversity. But there was a clear conscious effort every single year, because through diversity, that's how we learn, that's how we evolve. That's how we kind of expand. But again,
I should say that was the only time I've made a conscious effort. As I said, I got 50-50 gender split in my team. That's the only time I made a conscious effort, just because I just thought it was weird, because when I put out ads, for myself, I get a good mix. But, with recruiters, I wasn't. And I think maybe your listeners might be interested in why I think, without actually I don't make an effort. Like, I don't go out there and say, I want more women on my team or anything like that. But what I do is, as I said earlier, I do videos. And I say, this is what the team is. This is what you'd be working on. Rather than just a lot of text, I do videos and I do pieces to cameras, and sometimes they're silly, sometimes they're serious. But I think it gives people a flavour of who you're going to be working with all day.
Absolutely. And also an insight to you and your character, right? I think quite often maybe people feel intimidated because of I don't know, maybe they'll do the research in a team and go, wow, this team's phenomenal. Or they're like, I don't know anything about the team, and I'm kind of like, I don't know. But I absolutely love that approach. And actually, the only other person I've ever seen that in a leadership position in cyber was Dennis Cruz. You may have seen or familiar with Dennis. I've never had the pleasure of meeting him, but I really liked his work way back in the day. And when they were publishing all their cool stuff like assessments, their cool frameworks, was at Moonpig or Photobox, and you're just like, this is amazing. Then probably the next advanced stage of that was like Dropbox, and you're like, or GitLab. These companies have really good frameworks. I don't know what's happened at Photobox and Moonpig and stuff like that, but that was really good. And I saw Dennis when he was at, I think, Holland and Barrett, and he sits with like the CEO, or he sits with someone who's a strategic stakeholder in the organization, and you're like, is it cheesy? 100%, but it's this is how things are, and I love that approach, because again, it gives an insight to the person you're going to be working with, the people on the team or your co-workers, and I think more and more companies should adopt that.
Hi everyone, I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about today's sponsor, which is Vanta. Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Through my experiences of using Vanta, Vanta automates compliance. It covers everything from SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and many more, saving you time and money, while helping you build customer trust. I love all the insights that it gives me, covering everything from asset management, my control failures, audit status, even vulnerabilities from other connecting systems which have been integrated into the platform. Having a centralized place for something like an ISO program has been a godsend for me. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. Why Vanta? With over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora, they all use Vanta to manage risk and provide security in real time. So, my listeners can claim a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta at vanta.com/decloaked. That's vanta.com/decloaked. Thanks.
I'm interested, what type of feedback did you get from that? Did you say, like, did anyone say, hey, Leanne, that was brilliant, or really like that? Or
so I literally had people say in interview, turn around to me and say, I only applied for the sellers videos.
Yes, amazing. I love it.
That's what drew me in. I was like, this team looks fun. It looks interesting. One of the other things I also do is that with every job advert, I always offer it as full-time, part-time, or job share. Always.
Yeah.
Because I would much rather have someone who's brilliant in for 3 days a week than someone who's mediocre for 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And I think just offering that and it opens up the candidate pool, not just women, but loads of people who might have, other responsibilities and needs and stuff like that. People who are looking after elderly parents and things like that.
Yeah.
It opens it up massively. Now, not everyone takes me up on that, but I like offering it, right?
Yeah. And I think that shows a lot as well from the company. Also shows that the hiring manager has a willingness to make work evolve around people. The world changed after the pandemic. Lots of people come out with children, myself included, and it's like, people need to be able to fit around that lifestyle. And I think you 10x the output, right? You definitely get more bang for your buck if people are like, hey, I can only work 30 hours, or these are the days I can work because I've got childcare, or I need to do something, or whatever it may be. And that I think is really, really good. And I mean, I feel super positive on this episode today.
It's not rocket science, though. You know what I mean? Like,
but people forget.
How do you want to be treated? So the latest episode that's out at the moment is a guy who specializes in customer-led experiences, and on that he said, you sat in a train, right, and the train's been delayed. It's taking ages to get off. It's cramped. It's awful. You paid a fortune for this. He said, you know what bad customer service feels like. So why do you, when you go into your organization, because you're on that train to go to work, and you come into the office, you treat people like that train company treated you, right? You make people have such a crappy experience, even though you know how much that's wound you up right at the start of the day, how inconvenient that's made everything feel, and the knock-on impact that's had on the rest of your day and your perception of that company. But yet, as soon as we go through the office doors, we sit there and we just go, oh, right, no, I'm going to put these controls in place. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it really, we'll treat every single person like they're a master criminal out to do harm in the organization. They're not. People come to work mostly to do a good job, right? There's very few people in the organization that come in to be outwardly malicious. Very, very few. So why do we design security controls that piss the majority off when it's only a small minority we need to be concerned about? It's something we have to really think about in cyber.
And we need to shift that focus. I completely agree. And it's a really good angle that you've put into that. And I hope that people listening to this that will kind of open up their mindset and be a bit more open towards different things. Like I've seen recently, I've got some friends in America, and they were saying that like 90% of their customer base, like tens of thousands of customers, were demanding everyone get back to the office for 3-4 days a week. Now you're seeing it obviously in the UK, like London and major cities, and it's like the world's changed. You need to be open to these things to allow, because if you don't, then people just go work somewhere else. That's how
The
it is.
amount of jobs I get offered where it's just like mandated, like three days a week,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, why? What? So my work is flexible, very flexible. We have a policy called work where it works,
Nice.
and I find with a policy like that, actually, people come in more than they normally would.
Yeah,
So,
I totally agree. I totally agree.
But and they come to, oh yeah, but it's only three. It's not only 3 days a week. I've got a dog, and because everyone else bought a dog during lockdown, I can't get a
Yeah.
dog sitter, and it costs money, and I don't want to be away from it, to be honest, because that's my main source of exercise is walking the dog,
Yeah.
which is good for my well-being. It's just mad that this mandate has come in, and I just think the technology is there to help us understand potential trust issues when it comes to security. You know, if you've got a good DLP and things like that, we should be okay. We should be okay with this stuff. You know, if we, fortify our networks, use VPNs and virtual machines and everything that we all know is good security practices. There shouldn't be any reason except for when you want to do some really good, strong collaboration work, when you want to engage with that human element. And that human element is so incredibly important. Like I like hybrid working. But I recognize that it's not ideal for everyone. And we have the tools now to be able to enable that. So a mandate, like a stupid mandate where it's like, oh no, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like really specific. Oh, that drives me mad. There is no point me sat in a organization, like in an office where I'm just on Zoom calls all day.
I know.
To me, that's just such a waste of time.
I know. And I think it's just there's like an illusion where people need to break it. And it doesn't help with people like Alan Sugar and, prominent voices like in the UK that are like, you need to get back to work. It's like this old Victorian, Victorian factory master mindset.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. But we digress. So I wanted to obviously pass to you in terms of a topic you think needs relevance or clearing up in the industry. I mean, we've had everything from identity management, we've had everything from pen testing. So yeah.
Let's do security awareness.
Nice.
Because
Yeah.
then we can go more into the anthropology side of things. So security awareness from a cultural perspective. Well, actually, let's roll that back. Is security awareness worth it? Right. What do you think?
I think for me it's essential, but it needs to be the right type of awareness. It needs to be engaging. God, I feel like I'm on the spot now, Leanne. You've thrown me. Yeah.
I'm just curious to see what you think about it.
Yeah.
My big thing is we don't hire the right people to do security awarness usually. It's sometimes usually
Or
someone's
we don't
extra.
hire people at all to do
Well,
awareness.
there is that. I can't. Yeah, I think I did see a report recently. Quite especially small organizations. Yeah, it's the side of the desk activity. Usually, probably hiring a security awareness platform, which pretty much does phishing simulations, things like that. And that's the problem. Is I think it's also very important, but I think we do it incredibly badly. And the problem is when you do something like that, anything cultural incredibly badly, people don't respect it.
Yeah.
And when people don't
used to it. Yeah.
Well, when people don't respect something, they rebel.
Yeah.
And rebellion could take very many forms. Rebellion could be ridicule, like making fun of. I once joined an organization and this was before I started, and they purchased a phishing simulator platform. I'm not going to name who. And I remember my heart sank when I saw the templates, and I was like, these are crap. My dog would be able to spot these or a fake, by miles. And the result was when we did phishing simulations, people did laugh at them. They thought they were hilarious. And that absolutely eroded any kind of confidence they had in the security team because it insulted their intelligence. You would hope that, different levels, of course, but most people we hire are intelligent beings, thoughtful beings, and we don't treat them like that when we put really crappy phishing simulations in front of them. So there's that element of, the ridicule, which is, I guess, the softer side of it. And then there's the other side of it where people are so angry at you for your engagement, your security engagement, from a security awareness perspective, that they actively go out to undermine that, either by ignoring any kind of advice and guidance and doing workarounds and things like that. Both scenarios lead to a situation where you've got an organization that is not prepared to face human-centric cyber threats. And that's terrible, because the tools are doing, as in the security tools, are doing a really fantastic job. We might moan about them sometimes, but I tell you what, I don't want to sit and watch all the firewall pings manually. I'm glad the tools do what they need to do, right? It's not humanly possible these days to be able to do any of this manually. So the tools are doing a fantastic job when configured correctly. So it's the human element, and that's what the criminals are going for. And yet, when it comes to cyber, it's one of the most underinvested areas that we do. Even though we all know that often it's either a misconfiguration or someone's clicked on something, right? And then that's how a lot of these criminals get in. Both of those are human-led. A human configures that, so it's human-led, and phishing simulation obviously is very human-led. So, phishing, clicking on a fish and things like that is very human-led. So why do we keep underinvesting in these areas? And I think it's because we're a little bit scared of the human element. And rightly so. Not very many organizations have hired an anthropologist to come and talk about security.
This
right?
is true. Yeah.
But there are ways and means we can go about understanding the human element of security. And it's very low cost and very effective. So one of them is just listen to people. Start engaging with areas of the business. Figure out, where are your biggest risks? Is it the customer service team, the online phone customer service team, because they're really busy and they get bombarded with hundreds of emails a day? They're timed, they're targeted. They will, be incentivized to work quickly, and therefore mistakes will happen, because when you're working quickly and at pace, mistakes do happen. Are they your biggest targets? Talk to them. Find out, okay, so when you log into our portal, is it single sign-on, or do we make you remember passwords for loads of different things? And so have you written that down? Have you used the same password elsewhere? Because we don't make it easy for you. Should we have just used single sign-on, right? Have a conversation. Speak to the management team of that. Like, what would be a fair amount and useful amount of training for your team? Bearing in mind that it's going to be a big ask to turn around to say you've got 100 customer service people on the phones 24 hours a day, to say, oh, I want to pull them all out for an hour. Think about the costs of that, right? Is it, and what part of it will be worth it, right? You have to have these conversations. And then the other element of it is to really think, well, who in the organization is thinking in a customer-led mindset? Now, a lot of organizations, particularly the bigger you go, have people who work either as user researchers or user experience. Speak to them, ask for their help, because they talk to people day in, day out, and ask the right questions about what is working, what do people want. And if you don't know what actually people's motivations are in your organization, you can't prepare from a security perspective, because you can't prepare the security controls that will meet the needs of them. If you just go and block everything, and then they need that specific tool, like marketing, for example, if you block Canva, for example, one day on a whim, then all of a sudden they can't do their marketing campaigns. That's a problem. And that's usually a problem that happens time and time again, because security teams put controls in place without consultation. They consult amongst themselves, and maybe with like architecture, security architecture and things like that. But they don't go to the actual business that is going to be affected and say, a bit like you would do for a regulatory model. So when ISO is updating something, it gives you a heads up, doesn't it? Yeah. They say in a couple of years' time, this is going to be a nice to have right now in the guidance, but in a couple of years' time, it's going to be mandatory. You're going to have to do this. It gives you time to prepare for it. And while you're preparing for it, they're constantly asking for feedback. How are you finding this control in your organization? How are you finding this? We don't do that in a lot of cybersecurity teams. And as a result, was when we put those controls in place, we then either get the CEO going, I've just had marketing complain to me that they can't do their jobs and da 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 da. And then again, that social capital as a function goes down.
Yeah.
Right. And then which makes it a lot harder for you to get buy-in on your other initiatives in the future. And then you've also got all the other teams really angry at you. They don't trust you because you didn't trust them. And if it doesn't have a massive impact, we still don't ever go around after the controls are in place going, is everything all right with that? Did that impact you in any way? We don't do that reconsultation piece. Nor do we rarely actually go back in like a year or two's time and go, is that control still necessary? Now, I remember one role I did when I first joined. And I came in and I was just like, hey, I'm here to think about security in a different way, help you out, work more collaboratively with you. And I remember one of the engineers turned around to me and said, oh, great. If you're here to help, I do have a problem. Can you help me with that? And I said, okay, yeah, what's the problem? I said, Bluetooth. I'm like, Bluetooth, right, okay. It's banned. We blocked, can't access Bluetooth on our devices. I was like, okay, that's unusual. It's kind of like a low risk attack vector. Bluetooth, you've got to be predetermined to sit and transfer data via Bluetooth. And yeah, it turns out the reason that, this security team that I just joined was very, very risk averse. And they decided to block Bluetooth, but the end result was because the developers wanted to listen to their wireless headsets to music while they were working coding, so being more productive, it enabled them to be more productive. They were pulling scripts off the internet, PowerShell scripts, to bypass those security controls. Now, in my eyes, a script that I don't know what it's actually doing behind the hood is much worse than enabling people to listen to music while they work or using Bluetooth devices. And again, so straight away, I stopped that, control from having an impact. But it's about understanding, like, what do people want in an organization? And then coming back to what we were talking about earlier is, it's my job to make the business look good. And if the business look good because those devs are able to listen to music and code better and more effectively and meet their deadlines, to me, that's a win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they always remember it because it's a symbolic gesture.
Yes.
Psychologically, they can relate to it, like, oh, Lianne unlocked this, so Lianne wants to implement a new, SDLC tool, a SaaS task. Cool, let's give it a bash because she allowed us to listen to music. I know that sounds so...
No, it's an actual thing. It's an actual thing. So in anthropology, it's called reciprocity.
Nice.
And it stems from a guy who wrote a book called Stone Age Economics. And reciprocity is basically the giving of gifts. And if we're going back into kind of ancient times, our ancestors, the giving of gifts was very symbolic. So you would have, for example, two people living on two separate islands, they could see each other and things like that. And the giving of gifts was a solidification of community. It was saying, if something happens, I've got you back because hey, I found this really nice set of shells. You can make a really lovely necklace out of it. Here you go. And then what happens with reciprocity is, and this is a nice thing that happens with reciprocity, as humans, we're incentivized to over reciprocate when someone does something nice to us. Now, the example I tend to give is, do you know when your partner buys you a really thoughtful gift for your birthday or Christmas?
Yes.
Now, we first thought is, that's really, really sweet, really nice. The second thought, if you I would say if you have any kind of human compassion, your second thought is, oh God, how am I going to top this for their birthday? How am I going to top this? Yeah, right? How am I going to top this? That is reciprocity at work. The giving of gifts in the expectation that eventually that gift will be repaid.
Yeah.
And we over reciprocate. Now, gifts in a modern context doesn't necessarily mean literal things. So, giving someone a chocolate bar, hopefully they'll think, oh, that person's dead nice. I'm going to do something nice for them eventually. But the giving of gifts in the cyber security team's arsenal is things like reviewing security controls. Yeah. Considering their viewpoints, enabling them to make really strong security decisions in collaboration rather than against them. That is in the cybersecurity team's gift in terms of reciprocity. And you keep giving small gifts to start with. If you want to start doing this in your organization, small gifts. So like a release of controlled access, maybe review something and go, actually, that is no longer necessary. There will definitely be something in your organization that is no longer necessary as a security control. And start loosening up those controls a bit that don't have an impact. And then you will find, if you keep building up that reciprocity behavior, that eventually you will have a really strong collaboration between two teams that normally probably wouldn't get on very well together.
Yeah.
Now, in the early stages of reciprocity, you do have to expect that you will not receive something immediately in return. You have to just keep working on it. But eventually, those human instincts kick in, which is where it's about, and they will start reciprocating in return. So there is science behind it. So yeah, you are right.
And hopefully people can use that in the mix and ultimately help I don't know, build bridges and pull down the barriers between various different teams, and because we will struggle with it. But yeah, so to conclude then today's episode then, Lianne, the one thing in cyber you think is BS and needs a focus on or needs to change?
The idea that certs are everything, I think that's bullshit. Absolutely.
So. Yeah.
I do feel people, because I get a lot of people early careers coming to me and say, how do I do it? And should I throw loads of money at these cert companies? And one half of me goes, oh, please don't just throw money at these cert companies, because from my perspective, am I hiring someone junior? I really don't expect them to have certs because they're junior. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would actually rather sort of see evidence of real work. And I don't mean like paid work or anything like that. It can be things like try hack me and stuff like that, like evidence of like a portfolio instead rather than certs, because I've done certs. Certs just teach you how to pass an exam, right? I don't feel like whenever I've done a cert in a particular subject, when I've probably not come into it totally fresh. It's very rare that you pick a cert that you come in totally fresh when you get to kind of my level. So you've probably been doing it for a while, but you probably need to do a cert to kind of tick a compliance tick box somewhere. Yeah. So I never really feel like I learn anything except how to pass the test. And so when I see a junior person doing it, I'm like, it doesn't really apply to the real world, because what you learn in an exam, like Cat5 cables and things like that, I was like, I don't need you to know that off the top of your head. And what port does what off the top of your head, like straight away, like really obscure ones, I should say, by the way. There's Google for that.
I know.
I was
actually
that
sorry,
drives
please.
me mad. Yeah, that drives me mad.
And it's funny, like I remember two stories. One of them, a colleague of mine many years ago, and they were the first person in our group to pass CISP, and they showed me the book, and it was like that. And I started reading it, and I remember they came back, and I'd actually fallen asleep on one of our sofas, and I was like, I can't even comprehend how mind-numbing this stuff is. Then I had another colleague at another place, and they were like, oh, I've got 6 or 7 acronyms at the end of my name, all these certs. I'm like, but you have no practical hands-on experience. And I think that's where, again, if people have a portfolio of work, it carries more weight, that experience. Like, I think the future, you probably laugh at this, I think the future exams and certs will be literally like, here's 500 questions that your colleagues are going to ask you. How well can you research them using ChatGPT, or as you said, Google? And I know that sounds so like comical, but I think it'll be actually more focus on your ability to research, to find the answer, and your interpretation of it, rather than sitting and reading a book and start
nobody knows everything. And if you claim to, then I'm just going to call bullshit on that. I always ask a particular question in my interviews. So this is a hint tip if anyone ever gets interviewed by me. And the answer I expect from that is I would Google it, or I would research it.
Yeah.
Because I want to see evidence when I hire someone that if they get stuck, one, that they would ask for help, but also before they do that is they would just look it up. Like, I don't expect, that's what certs promise you. Certs sell you the idea that you'll have all this knowledge to your fingertips, right? Forever. that's not how human brains work, because if they did, then when I told people, have a good strong password, it would stick, wouldn't it? It doesn't.
This is true.
So I always ask the question, and my answer that I'm looking for is, oh, I would look it up. I would Google it. Right? Because I want people to tell me that, because that to me says more about the person's capabilities than someone like, oh, just kind of, I don't know, struggle. And I'm like, no, don't. Just like.
You'll laugh at this, Leanne. I was actually asked this question about 18 years ago or something, right? I won't name the company. And I said, listen, I don't know the answer, but however, I would either ask colleagues or I would try and research this maybe through the internet or whatever it may be. And actually, during like the feedback session was like, oh, you never get the job because you lack the domain knowledge. And they obviously quoted me verbatim, and I'm like, really? But in hindsight, wonderful thing, because I would have probably been miserable and everything else, and these things just happen. But it's interesting how new certifications come to the market, and it's the same approach, same format. Again, there'll be people that completely disagree with us, and they find the great logic, especially if they're in somewhere that needs military clearance, or they need to be somewhere like the US. I know they're quite heavy on this as well, where you need to have like, I don't know, CompTIA or something to pass some NIST benchmark or whatever it is. And I get that, but security's changing, because if you're just stuck with a bunch of people that can recite, I don't know, CISP or CISM, there's so many other aspects of the domains that you miss, and then that obviously leaves you caught out. And but it's interesting all the same. But what we'll do, Leanne, if you don't have any other further thoughts on that, we'll wrap up. And again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Again, everyone, please follow Leanne on socials. Her podcast, will put some nice animation in here somewhere. Please support Leanne's work as well. And again, Leanne, you're someone that I've been, was literally my top 5 people. I was like, let's get people who I think are engaging, who I definitely not only get educated, but certainly, when I'm having a bad day and I'm on LinkedIn and I see something funny or I see something very constructive. So again, thanks very much for your time, Leanne. And again, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely, yeah. Come for the memes, stay for the insights. That's what I always say.
We're going to get some cool animation on that. We'll get maybe some things dancing around my head or something. I don't know. But again, Leanne, thank you so much for being such a strong advocate within cyber and for giving your time today. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.